Hi, welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to be giving a quick introduction to SourceTree, graphical user interfaces, GUIs, and I'm going to be going over all of that in this video so that when we start installing it, you have kind of an idea of what it does. So before we get into SourceTree, let's explain what a GUI is. So a GUI, or graphical user interface, is pretty much just anything that allows you to perform tasks or interact with your system through something graphical, so a graphical interface, so icons, notifications, buttons, things like that. So you can probably already come up with some ideas of GUIs. They're used all over, but pretty much they're built off of something, or a system or a library, and these systems and these libraries are usually interacted with through command line or through programming or some form of advanced interaction that usually the average user can't do. So what GUIs do is make it more user friendly by making everything visual so that more people can have access to those systems. So here are some examples of GUIs. Pretty much any version of Microsoft Windows and any operating system in terms of how they work, for example, their desktop, icons, apps, things like that, they all work in this GUI kind of manner because all of this can be done through the command line. You do not need icons and desktops and things like that. You can do it all through a terminal. But what happens is, because most people don't know how to use a terminal, so what Microsoft does and what Apple does and any other producer of operating systems is they make these series of icons and apps and designed it so that it's more accessible to the average user. So that's pretty much what a GUI is. Google Chrome, any browsers, games, all sorts of things like that. Games not so much because they're meant to be GUIs. They don't really interact with anything, but that's pretty much what a GUI is. It's just something that allows you to interact with it in a more user-friendly way. So let's talk about SourceTree now. So SourceTree is a GUI that allows you to interact with Git through a graphical interface. It uses icons, trees, and a lot of visualization. So it makes it easier for not just the average user, but for anyone who prefers visual kind of development. Because a lot of people, they prefer to use, what you see is what you get tools, especially for website development. These days, especially things like WordPress. They use it kind of to just make the whole experience a little lighter, because developing things from scratch these days is a little bit hard. Well, it's always been hard, difficult in a sense. So a lot of people are using visual programs, things like that, to make their lives a little bit easier. Now, you don't necessarily have to use it. In my opinion, I prefer using a terminal when using Git, but some people like to prefer, using something visual, something like a program, something tangible, which they can, interact with. So that's why I'm making this section, is for those people who don't like the terminal that much. So, maybe if you use SourceTree, something a little bit more your style, you can get up to speed with Git and, really understand how it works. So in the end, SourceTree is just a Git GUI. It allows you to interact with your repositories and do all the commands just through a graphical interface. So it completely builds off of Git and the commands you can use on the terminal. So it runs the same things in the terminal, except the thing is it does it through your program. So you press a button and it does it for you, instead of, having to type it out in the terminal yourself. So that's just a little idea of what SourceTree is. Alright, so now that you know what SourceTree is, we're going to move on, start installing it, setting it up, building accounts so that we can move forward and start using it in our repositories. Alright, let's move on.